Lisa Grant stood at the tall windows of Kepler Station, watching ships from 100 different worlds dock at the massive spaceport. As Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, she had seen this view thousands of times, but today felt different. Today fear hung in the air like a thick fog. The station buzzed with nervous energy. Alien delegates whispered in their native languages, their voices carrying worry that needed no translation. Lisa had been in politics long enough to read the room, and right now the room was scared. "Ambassador Grant," came a voice behind her. She turned to see Captain Jake Morrison approaching, his blue uniform crisp despite having just arrived from patrol duty. Jake commanded the UES Liberty, one of only 12 human ships allowed in council space under the treaties that kept humanity on a tight leash. "Captain?" Lisa nodded. "I take it you got the same emergency summons I did." Jake's face was grim. 3 more colony worlds went silent in the past week. That makes 15 total. The outer rim is emptying fast. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. The outer rim colonies were humanity's neighbors, the brave souls who lived on the edge of known space. If they were fleeing, something terrible was coming. The 2 humans walked through the station's corridors toward the council chambers. Other species gave them a wide berth, as they always did. Even after 50 years of peace, the galaxy still remembered what humans were capable of. Earth was a death world that had produced a death species, and no amount of diplomatic smiles could erase that reputation. "Have you heard anything about what's causing the evacuations?" Lisa asked as they entered a transport pod. Jake shook his head. "Official channels say equipment failures and solar storms. But the refugees tell different stories. They talk about something called the Devourers." The transport pod glided silently through the station's central hub. Through the transparent walls, they could see emergency meetings happening in every visible conference room. The normally orderly station looked like chaos barely held in check. "The Devourers," Lisa repeated. "Never heard that name before. Neither had I until yesterday. My crew picked up some survivors from the Harmony system. They were broken, traumatized in ways I've never seen. They kept saying the same thing over and over. They eat everything. They eat everything." The council chambers were already packed when they arrived. Lisa took her place at the small human section, a reminder of humanity's junior status in galactic politics. Jake sat in the observer's area, his hand unconsciously resting on his sidearm. President Zara 9 of the Synthetics called the session to order. Her artificial body gleamed under the chamber's lights, but even her perfect features couldn't hide the strain in her voice. "Fellow members of the council, we face an unprecedented crisis." The main display activated, showing a map of the galaxy's outer rim. Red zones marked dead systems, and the pattern was clear. Something was moving inward, consuming everything in its path. 17 star systems have gone completely silent. Zara 9 continued. "No communications, no energy signatures, no signs of life. Our survey teams report finding nothing but empty worlds stripped of all biological matter." A ripple of fear passed through the chamber. The Celestials, beings of pure energy who rarely showed emotion, actually flickered with distress. The insectoid hive minds clicked nervously among themselves. "What could cause this level of devastation?" asked Chancellor Vore of the Crystal Collective, his voice crackling like breaking ice. The display changed to show grainy sensor data from one of the lost worlds. Lisa leaned forward, trying to make sense of the readings. The planet looked normal from orbit, but every scan showed the same impossible result. No life signs anywhere. "We believe we are facing the return of an ancient threat," Zara 9 said, "something our historians called the Devourers. They were mentioned in old records as a species that consumed entire worlds, but we thought they were myths." "Myths don't evacuate 17 star systems," Jake muttered from behind Lisa. Dr. Keth of the Science Directorate stepped forward, his tall, gray form trembling slightly. "We have analyzed the few sensor readings we managed to collect. The evidence suggests these entities don't just kill. They consume all biological matter on a planetary scale. Plants, animals, even the smallest microbes. They leave nothing behind." The chamber fell silent. Even the normally chattering Trade Federation delegates stopped their constant negotiations to stare at the display. "How do we fight them?" asked General Thane of the military coalition, his forearms crossed in what Lisa recognized as a defensive posture. "We tried," came a weak voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to see Admiral Kex of the Rim Defense Force, her usually proud bearing replaced by something that looked like defeat. 3 full battle groups engaged the Devourers at the Epsilon cluster. We used our most advanced weapons, our best tactics. Nothing worked. Lisa felt her blood turn cold. The Rim Defense Force was known for their advanced technology and superior firepower. If they couldn't stop these Devourers, what could? Our energy weapons had no effect, Admiral Kex continued. Our kinetic bombardments might as well have been throwing pebbles. The Devourers absorbed everything we threw at them and kept coming. They didn't just defeat us, they consumed my ships, my crews, everything. The silence that followed was deafening. Lisa had never seen the galactic community this scared. These were species that had mastered faster-than-light travel, that had built megastructures spanning entire star systems. They were the most advanced civilizations in known space, and they were helpless. President Zara 9 looked around the chamber, her artificial eyes meeting each delegation in turn. When her gaze fell on Lisa, it lingered longer than the others. "We face extinction," Zara 9 said simply. "Our conventional military forces cannot stop the Devourers. Our technology is useless against them. In perhaps 6 months, they will reach the core worlds. Unless we take drastic action, galactic civilization will end." Lisa knew what was coming before the words left Zara 9's mouth. She had seen this moment building for years, had dreaded it even as some part of her had expected it. "We must ask for help from the one species that might be able to stop them," Zara 9 continued. "The species we have spent 50 years trying to contain. The species we have called monsters." Every eye in the chamber turned to Lisa. She felt the weight of their desperation, their fear, their hope. For half a century, the galaxy had kept humanity on a short leash, terrified of what would happen if they were ever let off. The treaties, the restrictions, the careful monitoring of every human ship and weapon had all been designed to prevent humanity from doing what they did best. "You want us to fight them?" Lisa said. "It wasn't a question." "We want you to do what you do," Zara 9 replied. "What you did to the Vegan Empire when they tried to enslave your colonies. What you did to the hegemony when they attacked Earth. What you've always done when faced with an existential threat." Lisa stood slowly, feeling the weight of history settling on her shoulders. Around her, the most advanced species in the galaxy waited for her answer. They had called humanity monsters for so long that they had forgotten monsters could be useful. "If we do this," Lisa said carefully, "if we agree to fight the Devourers, the treaties will have to be suspended. All of them. We'll need complete operational freedom." The chamber erupted in worried whispers. Complete operational freedom for humanity meant unleashing everything the galaxy had spent decades trying to contain. "Alternative is extinction," Zara 9 said simply. Lisa looked around the chamber one more time, seeing fear and desperation in every face. Then she thought about the empty worlds on the rim, the consumed fleets, the refugees fleeing in terror. She thought about what humanity had always done when backed into a corner. "I'll need to consult with Earth," she said finally, "but I think you already know what our answer will be." As she left the chamber with Jake beside her, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that they had just crossed a line they could never uncross. The galaxy had begged for Earth's help and Earth would answer. They just might not like what that answer looked like. Admiral Pete Collins stood on the bridge of the UES Titan, staring at the most unusual orders he had ever received in 30 years of military service. The holographic document floated before him, bearing the seals of both Earth Command and the Galactic Council. 3 simple lines that changed everything. All military restrictions lifted. Complete operational freedom authorized. Stop the Devourers by any means necessary. Pete read the orders again, hardly believing what he was seeing. For 50 years, humanity had operated under strict treaties that limited their military capabilities. No warships larger than cruiser class, no weapons of mass destruction, no deployment of more than 12 ships in any single system. All of that was gone now, swept away by 3 lines of text. "Sir?" Commander Kate Ross approached from the communications station. "Earth Command is requesting immediate response to Fleet Mobilization Order 7. Fleet Mobilization Order 7. Pete had never seen it activated, but every human officer knew what it meant. Total var preparation. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier that Earth could muster, brought to bear against a single enemy. "Acknowledge the order," Pete said quietly, "and send a message to all human ships in the sector. We're going home to collect our real fleet." Dr. Maya Johnson sat in her laboratory aboard the research station Galileo, studying the biological samples that had arrived that morning. As Earth's leading expert on alien biology, she had been called in to analyze the devourer threat. What she found in the samples made her stomach turn. The tissue fragments came from 3 different species that had once lived on the outer rim worlds, but they weren't just dead. They had been changed, altered on a genetic level in ways that should have been impossible. Computer, display analysis results for sample batch 7, Maya said. The holographic display showed DNA structures that looked like they had been rewritten by something that understood biology better than any known science. The samples contained traces of foreign genetic material, something that had invaded and consumed the original organisms from the inside out. This isn't just killing, Maya whispered to herself. This is conversion. Her assistant, Dr. Jim Parker, entered the lab carrying more sample cases. The latest batch from the Aurora system just arrived. The survey team says these came from what used to be a human colony. Maya felt her blood freeze. She opened the first case and immediately knew her worst fears were confirmed. The samples contained human genetic material, but it had been twisted and altered beyond recognition. They don't just eat us, she said, her voice barely audible. They turn us into more of them. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Davis piloted his stealth scout ship toward the edge of Devourer space, his heart pounding against his ribs. This was the first human reconnaissance mission into enemy territory, and Ryan knew the information he gathered could determine the fate of the galaxy. His ship, the UES Shadow, was designed for exactly this kind of mission. Advanced stealth systems, long-range sensors, and enough speed to run from anything it couldn't hide from. But as Ryan approached the dead zone where the Harmony system used to be, he wondered if running would be an option. Sensors are picking up massive energy signatures, reported Sergeant Amy Foster from the sensor station. Whatever's out there, it's big. The main display activated, showing the Harmony system as they approached. What Ryan saw made him grip his chair arms until his knuckles turned white. Where there had once been a thriving colony world with 3 billion inhabitants, there was now something that looked like a massive organic structure. It pulsed with a sickly green light and extended tentacle-like appendages that reached out into space for thousands of kilometers. Are those ships? Amy asked, pointing to smaller objects moving around the structure. Ryan enhanced the image and immediately wished he hadn't. The objects were ships, but they had been consumed and altered just like the biological samples Dr. Johnson was studying. Metal hulls had been replaced with organic matter that still maintained the basic shape, but pulsed with alien life. Record everything, Ryan ordered. And prepare a message torpedo for immediate launch if we're detected. As they moved closer, more details became visible. The structure wasn't just occupying the space where the planet had been. It was the planet, transformed into something that violated every law of physics Ryan understood. Sir, Amy's voice was shaking now. I'm detecting human life signs inside that thing. Ryan felt his blood turn to ice. How many? Hundreds of thousands. Maybe millions. They're alive, but the readings are wrong somehow. Through the shadow's powerful telescopes, Ryan could see into the structure's transparent sections. What he saw there would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. Humans and aliens suspended in some kind of fluid, their bodies connected to the structure by organic tubes. They were conscious, their eyes moving and mouths opening in what could only be screams, but no sound reached the vacuum of space. They're being kept alive, Ryan whispered. They're being farmed. Back on Earth, General Helen Brooks walked through the Cheyenne Mountain complex, watching humanity's military machine come alive for the first time in half a century. The massive underground facility buzzed with activity as officers and technicians prepared for the largest military deployment in human history. Status report, Helen asked Colonel Dan Murphy as they entered the main command center. All reserve fleets are moving to active status, Dan replied, reading from his tablet. The shipyards at Luna, Mars, and Titan are converting to full wartime production. We'll have 200 new warships within 6 months. Helen nodded, but her mind was on darker preparations. What about the Scorpion Protocol? Dan's face grew serious. The Scorpion Protocol was humanity's most classified military program. The weapons and tactics they had developed but never used. Things too terrible to deploy against any enemy that might someday become an ally. Dr. Williams reports that all biological weapons are ready for deployment, Dan said quietly. The Psychological Warfare Division has compiled target profiles for every known Devourer encounter, and the Special Weapons Team has completed testing on the Reaper drones. Helen felt a chill run down her spine. The Reaper drones were machines designed for one purpose: the complete extermination of a target species. They were self-replicating, intelligent, and programmed with a level of ruthlessness that made even hardened military officers uncomfortable. "I never thought we'd actually use any of this," Helen admitted. "The galaxy asked for the monsters from Earth," Dan replied. "They're about to find out what that really means." Admiral Collins stood in the war room aboard the Titan, surrounded by holographic displays showing human fleets moving throughout known space. Ships that had been scattered across the galaxy for decades were now converging on Earth, and with them came weapons that had been locked away since humanity's last total war. The UES Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace, its hull scarred from 50 years of peacekeeping missions, but Collins knew the ship's true capabilities were hidden beneath its diplomatic exterior. Like all human vessels, it had been built for war and simply pretended to be something gentler. "Admiral," came a voice from the communications console. "We're receiving reports from the reconnaissance mission." Lieutenant Commander Davis appeared on the main screen, his face pale and haunted. "Sir, the situation is worse than we thought. The Devourers aren't just killing populations. They're converting entire worlds into some kind of organic structures, and they're keeping the original inhabitants alive inside them." Collins felt anger building in his chest, the cold fury that had made humanity famous throughout the galaxy. "Are you certain?" "Confirmed, sir. Millions of humans and aliens are being held captive inside what used to be the Harmony system. They appear to be conscious and suffering." The war room fell silent. Every officer present understood what this meant. The Devourers weren't just invaders. They were torturers on a galactic scale. "Thank you, Commander," Collins said. "Get your ship back to safe space and prepare a detailed report." After the transmission ended, Collins turned to his staff. "Gentlemen, we are no longer fighting to defend territory or protect trade routes. We are fighting to prevent the enslavement and torture of every living being in the galaxy." Colonel Sam Hayes, Collins' tactical officer, stepped forward. "Sir, this changes our entire strategic approach. If they're keeping populations alive, direct bombardment might kill more civilians than enemies." Collins nodded grimly. "Which means we'll have to board those structures. We'll have to go inside and face them directly." The thought sent a chill through every person in the room. Boarding actions against the Devourers would be close-quarters combat against an enemy that consumed everything it touched. "Begin preparations for Operation Cleansing Fire," Collins ordered. "Full authorization for all restricted weapons and tactics. We're not going to beat the Devourers by playing fair." As the meeting broke up, Collins remained alone in the war room, staring at the displays showing Devourer positions. The galaxy had begged for Earth's help, and Earth was preparing to answer. But Collins wondered if the cure might prove worse than the disease. Humanity was about to show the galaxy what it looked like when the monsters from Earth decided to stop pretending to be civilized. Commander Alex Turner watched through the bridge windows as his battle fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What had once been home to 6 billion aliens was now a twisted mass of organic matter that pulsed with sickly light. The UES Retribution led a formation of 30 human warships, each one carrying weapons that had been locked away for 50 years. Alex had been chosen to lead the first human counterattack against the Devourers, and he intended to show the galaxy what humanity could do when the gloves came off. "Target analysis complete, sir," reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the tactical station. "The structure shows the same conversion pattern as the other systems. Estimated captive population, 4 billion sentients." Alex felt his jaw clench. 4 billion people trapped inside that nightmare, being slowly consumed by creatures that treated sentient life like cattle. The old Alex might have tried to find a way to save them all. The new Alex understood that sometimes mercy meant ending suffering quickly. "All ships, this is Retribution Actual," Alex spoke into his communicator. "Remember, we're not here to capture territory or negotiate surrender. We're here to exterminate a plague. Show no mercy, because they will show none to you." Captain Nina Foster commanded the assault ship UES Vengeance, her crew preparing for the kind of boarding action that human Marines were infamous for. Unlike other species who fought wars with careful rules and limited objectives, humans had learned to fight for total victory on their death world. First wave teams, prepare for insertion. Nina announced over the ship's intercom. Intelligence reports that Devourer internal structures are designed to process organic matter. That means close quarters, limited visibility, and enemies that can literally digest you on contact. Sergeant Mike Chen checked his flamethrower for the third time. The weapon had been considered too brutal for normal peacekeeping duties, but against the Devourers, it might be the only thing that worked. His squad wore full environmental suits with extra armor plating, but everyone knew their real protection was speed and violence. "Remember your training," Mike told his men. "These things don't negotiate, they don't retreat, and they don't die easy. But they can be killed, and that's what we're here to do." The first human attack began with a weapon that no other species would have considered using. Dr. Maya Johnson had developed a biological agent specifically designed to cause maximum pain and fear in devourer nervous systems. It wasn't meant to kill quickly. It was meant to make them suffer. "Deploying agony virus in 5 seconds, reported the weapons officer aboard the Retribution. "All ships maintain safe distance." The virus was released in microscopic drones that penetrated the organic structure's outer shell. Within minutes, the entire mass began writhing in what could only be described as pain. The Devourers inside were experiencing something they had never felt before: the fear of being consumed themselves. Alex watched the readings with cold satisfaction. Follow up with incendiary bombardment. Target the nerve clusters Dr. Johnson identified. The human fleet opened fire with weapons that had been designed not just to destroy, but to terrorize. Thermite bombs that burned at temperatures hot enough to melt steel. Sonic weapons that shattered organic matter at the molecular level. Chemical agents that broke down the bonds holding the converted structure together. But Alex knew the real battle would be fought inside, where his Marines would have to face the Devourers directly. Nina Foster's boarding pods punched through the structure's outer shell like bullets through flesh. Her Marines deployed into corridors that looked like the inside of some massive digestive system, walls pulsing with alien life and floors covered in organic slime. "Contact front," shouted Corporal Tom Williams as the first Devourer emerged from the wall itself. The creature was roughly humanoid but covered in what looked like living metal that shifted and flowed as it moved. Where its face should have been was a mass of tentacles surrounding a mouthful of rotating teeth. Mike Chen's flamethrower roared to life, engulfing the creature in chemical fire. The Devourer screamed, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once, but it kept coming. Mike's team opened fire with armor-piercing rounds that punched through the creature's defenses. "They're tough, but they die," Mike reported over the radio. "Just takes more firepower than usual." The battle inside the structure was like nothing in recorded military history. Human Marines fought through corridors lined with the bodies of consumed victims, some still alive and begging for death. The Devourers attacked from walls, ceilings, and floors, emerging from organic matter like sharks from dark water. But humans had learned to fight in the tunnels of Earth's underground cities, in the ruins of bombed-out buildings in conditions that would break most species. The Devourers were deadly, but they had never faced an enemy that enjoyed close-quarters combat. Breaching the central chamber, Nina reported, as her team blasted through a wall of living tissue. Holy hell. The central chamber was a sphere several kilometers across, filled with what looked like a vast organic computer. Millions of neural pathways pulsed with information, and suspended throughout the space were the conscious minds of every person the Devourers had consumed. "Can we save them?" asked one of Nina's Marines. Nina studied the readings on her scanner. The victims were barely alive. Their bodies dissolved, but their minds kept conscious and connected to the Devourer hive mind. They were experiencing every moment of consumption, feeling themselves being slowly digested while remaining aware. "No," Nina said quietly, "but we can end their suffering." The Retribution's bombardment reached its peak as Alex's fleet began what could only be called extermination. Every human ship focused its firepower on a different section of the structure, methodically destroying the organic mass that had once been a planet. "Sir, we're detecting Devourer ships approaching from the outer system," reported Sarah Kim. "Estimate 50 vessels of unknown configuration." Alex smiled coldly. "Good. Let them come to us." The Devourer fleet was unlike anything in the human database. Their ships were grown rather than built, organic vessels that pulsed with the same sickly light as their planetary structures. They moved through space like living creatures, extending tentacles and opening orifices that revealed weapons of incomprehensible design. All ships, Engage at maximum range, Alex ordered. These things want to get close enough to consume us. Don't let them. The space battle that followed showed the galaxy what human naval doctrine really looked like when unleashed without restriction. Every human ship carried weapons that had been banned by treaty, devices so destructive that even Earth's allies had demanded they be locked away. The UES destroyer launched a spread of Reaper torpedoes, each one carrying an artificial intelligence programmed with one goal: find and kill everything that wasn't human. The weapons pursued devourer ships through space, adapting to their defenses and learning from each attack. Captain Lisa Park commanded the heavy cruiser UES Thunder, her ship mounting experimental weapons that manipulated gravity itself. Firing gravitational disruptors, she announced, watching as nearby devourer ships were crushed into singularities by their own mass. The devourers fought back with weapons that converted matter directly into energy, beams that could dissolve entire ship hulls in seconds. But they had never faced an enemy that planned for total warfare, that built every ship with redundant systems and every weapon with multiple kill mechanisms. Enemy formation breaking apart, reported the Retribution sensor officer. They're trying to retreat. No retreat, Alex said firmly. Pursue and destroy. We don't capture devourer ships, we exterminate them. The human fleet spread out through the system like a pack of wolves hunting down every fleeing devourer vessel. No quarter was asked and none was given. By the time the battle ended, nothing remained of the devourer presence except drifting organic debris and the screams of their dying hive mind. Nina Foster stood in the ruins of the central chamber, watching her demolition teams place the final charges. The structure would be destroyed completely, leaving no trace of the horror that had consumed an entire world. All teams, fall back to minimum safe distance, Nina ordered. We're bringing this whole thing down. The explosion could be seen from orbit, a brilliant flash that marked the end of the first devourer world. But Alex knew this was just the beginning. Intelligence reports showed dozens of similar structures scattered across the outer rim. Set course for the Vega system, Alex ordered. We have more hunting to do. As the human fleet departed, leaving nothing but empty space where a devourer world had been, a message was transmitted across the galaxy. It was simple, direct, and carried a promise that made even humanity's allies nervous. This is Admiral Collins of the human fleet. To any devourer forces receiving this transmission, we are coming for you. There will be no negotiation, no mercy, no survival. You made the mistake of threatening our galaxy. Now face the consequences. The hunt had begun, and humanity intended to see it through to the very end. Admiral Pete Collins stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the largest human fleet in history approach the devourer homeworld. 300 warships stretched across space, each one carrying weapons that had never been used in anger. Today would mark either humanity's greatest victory or the galaxy's final defeat. Long-range sensors confirm it, sir, reported Captain Julie Adams from the sensor station. The homeworld is massive. Estimate diameter of 50,000 kilometers. It's not just a converted planet anymore. It's something else entirely. Pete stared at the main display, trying to comprehend what he was seeing. The devourer homeworld had grown beyond anything they had encountered before. It pulsed with veins of energy that stretched into space like tentacles, each one the size of a small moon. This wasn't just a world anymore. It was a living entity that defied understanding. Life sign readings? Pete asked. Billions, sir. Maybe trillions. From every species we've ever cataloged and some we haven't. Julie's voice was quiet. Sir, I think this is where they've been keeping everyone they've ever consumed. Every world, every civilization. They're all still alive in there. Colonel Beth Martin crouched behind the twisted remains of what had once been a devourer transport ship. Her Marines had been fighting on the homeworld's surface for 6 hours, and every minute revealed new horrors. The ground beneath their feet wasn't rock or soil. It was compressed organic matter from countless worlds, the remains of entire ecosystems pressed together into a foundation for the devourer hive. Movement ahead, whispered Sergeant Carl Jones, his rifle trained on a structure that looked like it was made of bones. Something big. Beth peered through her scope and immediately wished she hadn't. The building was made of bones, but they weren't dead bones. They moved and shifted, trying to pull apart, but held together by some alien force. Through gaps in the structure, she could see faces pressed against transparent walls, their mouths moving in silent screams. Preserve ships, Beth said into her radio. They're keeping the victims alive in preserve ships. Major Tom Clark led his rescue team through the corridors of the largest preserve ship they had found. Each chamber contained thousands of beings from different species, suspended in fluid that kept them conscious but unable to move. The sight was worse than any nightmare Tom had ever imagined. "We've got Celestials here," reported Corporal Jane Smith from ahead. "And humans. Lots of humans." Tom approached the nearest chamber and found himself looking at a human woman whose eyes tracked his movement. She was trying to speak, her mouth forming words that the fluid wouldn't let her voice. "Can we get them out?" asked one of his Marines. Tom studied the connections keeping the woman alive. Removing her from the system would kill her instantly, but leaving her meant continuing her torture indefinitely. "Check with medical," Tom ordered, though he already knew the answer. "But I don't think there's anything we can do." Dr. Maya Johnson worked frantically in her mobile laboratory, analyzing samples from the homeworld's surface. What she found challenged everything she thought she knew about biology. The Devourers hadn't just consumed other species. They had learned from them, incorporating the best aspects of each race into their own evolution. "They're not just parasites," Maya explained to Admiral Collins over the communication link. "They're adaptive evolutionary accelerators. Every species they consume makes them stronger, smarter, more dangerous." "How do we kill something like that?" Pete asked. Maya looked at her data one more time, hoping she was wrong. "Complete genetic destruction. We have to eliminate their ability to reproduce, to adapt, to survive. It means using weapons that will sterilize entire star systems." Pete felt a chill run through him. Maya was talking about weapons that could destroy all life in a region of space. Using them would make humanity responsible for genocide on a scale that dwarfed anything in galactic history. The battle for the homeworld's surface became a nightmare of close-quarters combat. Human Marines fought through cities made of living tissue, where buildings tried to digest anyone who entered them. The Devourers themselves had evolved beyond recognition, becoming creatures that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. Beth Martin's team encountered their first evolved Devourer in what had once been a civilian area. The creature was 3 meters tall and seemed to be made of shadows that occasionally revealed glimpses of consumed victims, still moving inside its body. "Flamethrowers aren't working," reported Carl Jones as his weapons. Fire passed harmlessly through the creature. "It's like it's not entirely here." The evolved Devourer reached out with appendages that existed in multiple dimensions at once. When it touched Marine Private Gary Wilson, he simply ceased to exist. Not killed, not consumed, erased from reality itself. "Fall back," Beth ordered. "Call in the experimental weapons team." Captain Nina Foster led her assault team into the deepest levels of the homeworld, following intelligence that suggested the Devourer hive mind was located somewhere near the core. The passages they traveled through were lined with neural tissue that pulsed with alien thoughts. "I can hear them," whispered one of her Marines. "The voices of everyone they've ever eaten. They're all still conscious in there." Nina tried to block out the psychic noise that pressed against her mind. The deeper they went, the louder it became. Billions of voices crying out in pain, begging for death, pleading for rescue that would never come. "There." Nina pointed to a massive chamber ahead. "That has to be it." The hive mind core was a sphere of pure neural tissue the size of a city block. It pulsed with the thoughts and memories of every being the Devourers had ever consumed. Around it, smaller nodes processed information from across the galaxy, coordinating the activities of every Devourer everywhere. "Placing the charges now," reported her demolitions expert. "But sir, destroying this will kill everyone connected to it." "That's billions of sentient beings." Nina stared at the core, knowing that inside it were the conscious minds of every person the Devourers had ever taken. Destroying it would end their suffering, but it would also mean accepting that they could never be saved. "Do it," she ordered. "Sometimes mercy looks like murder." Admiral Collins made the hardest decision of his military career as reports poured in from across the homeworld. His forces were taking heavy casualties. The rescue missions were failing, and intelligence suggested that more evolved Devourers were emerging every hour. "All ships, prepare for scorched earth protocol," Collins announced. "We're going to sterilize the entire system." Captain Julie Adams turned to stare at him. "Sir, we still have Marines on the surface. Thousands of them. And if we don't do this, the Devourers will spread to every system in the galaxy," Collins replied. Sometimes command means making choices that no one should have to make. The weapons that humanity unleashed on the Devourer homeworld had been developed in the darkest days of Earth's history, then locked away as too terrible to ever use. Quantum bombs that unraveled matter at the subatomic level, biological agents that targeted the basic structures of life itself, reality distortion weapons that made entire regions of space uninhabitable. Colonel Beth Martin received the evacuation order with only minutes to spare. Her surviving Marines ran for the extraction points as the homeworld began to shake apart around them. Behind them, the preserve ships were exploding in chains of brilliant light as their contents were finally released from torment. "All teams, emergency extraction now," Beth shouted into her radio. "The whole planet is coming apart." The final explosion could be seen from neighboring star systems. The Devourer homeworld didn't just die, it was erased from existence, leaving behind a region of space that would be empty for millions of years. But the victory came with a cost that would haunt humanity forever. In destroying the homeworld, they had also destroyed the billions of sentient beings who had been kept alive inside it. They had chosen to become genocidal murderers in order to prevent universal extinction. Admiral Collins stood alone on his bridge afterward, staring at the empty space where the homeworld had been. His communication officer approached carefully. "Sir, we're receiving reports from across the galaxy. All Devourer activity has stopped." "They're gone," Pete nodded slowly. The threat was over, but the price of victory would follow humanity for the rest of their existence. They had saved the galaxy by becoming the very monsters everyone had always said they were. "Send a message to Earth Command," Pete ordered. "Mission accomplished. The Devourers are extinct, all of them." As his fleet turned for home, Pete wondered if the galaxy would thank them for what they had done, or fear them even more than before. They had proven that when pushed far enough, humanity was capable of anything. Even genocide. The question now was whether the cure had been worse than the disease. Ambassador Lisa Grant walked through the halls of Kepler Station 6 months after the Devourer War ended. But everything felt different now. The same aliens who had begged for humanity's help now stepped aside when she approached, their eyes filled with something that looked like fear mixed with gratitude. The Galactic Council chambers were quieter these days. Where once there had been hundreds of delegates from across known space, now only representatives from the surviving species remained. The Devourers had consumed 43 entire civilizations before humanity stopped them, leaving gaps in the galactic community that would never be filled. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Grant of Earth," announced President Zara 9, her artificial voice carrying none of its former warmth. Lisa stood at the human podium, looking out at faces that couldn't quite meet her eyes. These were the same beings who had pleaded for Earth's help, who had lifted every restriction on human military action. Now they sat in judgment of what humanity had done with that freedom. "The Human Federation wishes to thank the Council for their recognition of our service during the recent crisis," Lisa said, using the careful diplomatic language that made mass extinction sound like a minor inconvenience. Chancellor Vore of the Crystal Collective spoke first, his voice crackling with barely controlled emotion. "Service. Is that what you call the sterilization of 17 star systems?" Lisa felt her jaw tighten. "We call it survival. The alternative was the extinction of all life in the galaxy." Admiral Pete Collins sat in his office on Earth, staring at reports that would never be made public. The final casualty numbers from the Devourer War painted a picture that kept him awake at night. Humanity had lost 30,000 soldiers, but in destroying the Devourer civilization, they had also killed over 2 billion sentient beings who had been kept alive in the preserve ships. "Sir?" Captain Julie Adams knocked on his office door. "The Secretary of Defense is here for your briefing." Pete closed the classified files and straightened his uniform. The politicians wanted to know how to handle humanity's new reputation. The galaxy now saw Earth as both savior and destroyer. The species that had proven it could commit genocide without hesitation when pushed far enough. "Send him in," Pete said, wondering how he would explain that the victory everyone celebrated had cost humanity its innocence. Captain Jake Morrison piloted the UES, Liberty, through space lanes that had once been terrorized by Devourer hunting parties. His patrol route took him past empty star systems where entire civilizations had once thrived, now marked only by memorial beacons floating in the void. "Captain," called his communications officer, We're receiving a distress signal from the Kepler 438 system. Jake felt his blood run cold. Kepler 438 was supposed to be empty, evacuated during the early days of the Devourer invasion. If someone was out there, they had been hiding for months. Set course for the signal, Jake ordered, and prepare the medical bay for refugees. What they found in the Kepler 438 system was a small colony ship drifting powerless near the outer planets. The vessel contained 300 survivors from a dozen different species, people who had been hiding in deep space since their worlds were consumed. "Please," begged the colony ship's captain, a celestial named Keth 7. "We've been monitoring the communication channels. The war's over, isn't it? The Devourers are gone?" Jake nodded, but he could see the fear in Keth 7's eyes. The survivors had heard the stories of how humanity had won the war. They knew about the weapons that could erase entire solar systems, about the tactics that showed no mercy to anyone connected to the enemy. "You're safe," Jake assured them. "Humanity doesn't make war on refugees." But even as he said the words, Jake wondered if they still carried the same meaning they had before the war. Dr. Maya Johnson published her final report on the Devourer extinction 6 months after the homeworld's destruction. The document was required reading in every xenobiology program in the galaxy, but it was also the stuff of nightmares for anyone who understood its implications. The complete elimination of the Devourer species required the deployment of weapons that fundamentally altered the structure of space-time in affected regions, Maya wrote. These areas will remain uninhabitable for approximately 10,000 years. What the report didn't mention was Maya's private research into humanity's other biological weapons. The viruses and genetic bombs that had been developed during the war were still in storage, waiting for the next time Earth decided that another species needed to be extinct. Maya often wondered if creating those weapons had been necessary, or if humanity had simply enjoyed having the power to play God with entire civilizations. General Helen Brooks oversaw the demobilization of the largest military force in human history, but she knew that the weapons and tactics developed during the Devourer War would never truly be retired. The knowledge of what humanity could accomplish when fully unleashed had changed Earth's place in the galaxy forever. The Scorpion Protocol remains classified at the highest levels. Helen briefed her senior staff. But every potential enemy in the galaxy now knows we have weapons that can sterilize star systems. That changes the strategic balance permanently. Colonel Dan Murphy, her intelligence chief, looked uncomfortable. "General, we're receiving reports that several species are developing their own doomsday weapons. The arms race has already begun." Helen nodded grimly. Humanity's demonstration of total warfare capability had taught the galaxy a lesson that some species were taking to heart. If Earth could develop weapons of mass extinction, so could they. The memorial service for the Devourer War's victims took place on Earth 1 year after the conflict ended. President Sarah Williams stood before representatives from every surviving species, trying to find words that could somehow make sense of what had happened. "We gather today to remember not only those who died fighting the Devourers," President Williams said, "but also those who died when we destroyed them. The innocent beings who were consumed by the enemy, who we could not save, who died when we chose to end their suffering rather than allow it to continue." In the audience, survivors from the rescue mission sat quietly. Major Tom Clark still saw the faces of the people trapped in the preserve ships when he closed his eyes. Captain Nina Foster couldn't forget the sound of billions of voices crying out as the hive mind died. They had saved the galaxy, but the cost would follow them forever. Ambassador Lisa Grant returned to the Galactic Council chambers for what she knew would be her final official appearance. The vote on humanity's future status in the galactic community had been delayed for months, but today the Council would decide whether Earth would be welcomed back into civilized space or treated as a permanent threat. "The Council has reviewed humanity's actions during the Devourer crisis," announced President Sara 9. "We acknowledge that your species saved galactic civilization from extinction." Lisa waited for the other shoe to drop. She could read the room well enough to know that gratitude and fear were fighting for control of the galactic community's response. "However," Sara 9 continued, "the methods used to achieve victory have raised concerns about humanity's place in our community. The complete extermination of a species, even an enemy species, violates the fundamental principles of galactic civilization." Chancellor Vore leaned forward. We therefore propose the reinstatement of the military restrictions that were lifted during the emergency. Humanity will return to the limited fleet sizes and weapon types that existed before the crisis. Lisa stood slowly, feeling the weight of history settling on her shoulders. The galaxy wanted to put the monsters back in their cage, to pretend that what they had witnessed during the war was an aberration rather than humanity's true nature. The Human Federation respectfully declines, Lisa said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. We will not accept restrictions on our ability to defend ourselves or our allies. The galaxy asked us to save it, and we did. The price of that salvation was discovering what we're truly capable of. The chamber erupted in worried whispers. President Zara 9 called for order, but the damage was done. Humanity was refusing to go back to being the carefully controlled junior member of galactic society. Are you threatening us, Ambassador? Asked Chancellor Vor. Lisa met his gaze steadily. I'm stating a fact. The weapons that destroyed the Devourers still exist. The humans who used them are still alive. The knowledge of how to build more is still in our databases. You asked for the monsters from Earth, and now you have to live with what that means. As Lisa left the council chambers for the last time, she could feel the fear following her. The galaxy had learned that humanity's restraint during 50 years of peace had been a choice, not a limitation. They had begged for mercy from the Devourers, and humanity had answered by becoming something even more terrifying. Captain Jake Morrison received new orders as he prepared for another patrol of the outer systems. Instead of the careful, limited missions of the past, human ships were now free to operate without restriction throughout known space. Orders from Earth Command, his communications officer reported. Full patrol authority. No engagement restrictions. Protect galactic peace by any means necessary.